All right. So now that I'm done with expansion, as far as I'm concerned, that 40-minute video, we're done with expansion. New Zealand's losing to Fiji in seven-man rugby. And as I've said it before, this seven-player rugby, this is brilliant. I don't know who thought of this, but it is so TV friendly. 15-player rugby is just a mess. This is fun to watch, and it's fast. It's 7 minutes both ways. 7-minute halves. It's intense. Now the game's over, and Fiji and New Zealand are fighting, and it's great. It's so intense. This is what sports should be. Um, so I've got next week off, and I'm trying to think of some kind of an adventurous thing to do. Now, um, the Trans Canada Trail has been an interesting idea to me since it was announced years ago, and it's been changed now to the Great Trail. I'm guessing because it doesn't cross all of Canada. Um, but it does go pretty far. And I do have the idea of replacing my lovely bike there on payday, which is on Friday. Um, my son is spending less and less time with me as he gets older. Honestly, this summer he spent more time with his mother than he spent with me. She comes down and throws money at him, and I just take care of him. But I digress. Uh, it would be it would be fun to, with a new bike in tow, to hit a trail and just ride. And I've been thinking ride west, just ride west, or go crazy and ride east. Now from here, there's nothing to the east. Basically, I can ride my bike for probably 13 to 14 hours and come out in Princeton. Now, the downside of that is I'll be dead because there's a lot of climbing, and my body's not used to that on a bike anymore. Um, I even looked at Banff. I was like, how far would it? Yeah, 46 hours on a bike straight. 46 hours. I don't want to do anything fun for 46 hours. So Banff is out. Vancouver's 6 hours 58 minutes. It says on Google Maps. But I would take the trail, so it's probably closer to 8 hours. So if I left here, keeping in mind I'm used to getting up at like 2:30 in the morning. So if I got myself up, pretended it was a work day, was out of the door at 3:30 in the morning, I could probably be into the parts of Vancouver I wanted to visit by about 11 in the morning. It's tempting. It's actually tempting. Um, and just be able to just use trails almost the whole way. One of the reasons that I don't venture very far on my bike is being in farm country. Farmers have dogs. They have big dogs, and they don't have to keep them on leashes because people don't come around very often. These big dogs really hate cyclists. And I don't know what's scarier when they see you coming and they come out so you know what you're into, or when they're sleeping on the front lawn about 10 feet from the road. And you're like, do I ride fast to make more noise or do I ride slow so I can't get away if it turns out it's playing possum? I had that experience a few times in my early 20s and then went, this isn't worth it. But the Great Trail, as it's called, it makes it more interesting. Um, I mean, I've done the ride along the river quite a few times. That gets me 5, 6K, and that's nothing. I don't even notice it. So if I continued on, I imagine I could hit Abbotsford with no problem whatsoever. And then once I'm in Abbotsford, then it's like, okay, gravy, because from there to Vancouver is basically all city farm. There's no dead zones. If I head east, it's too quiet. It's bears are hungry and it's late in the summer quiet. I don't like that idea. And if I'm riding by myself, which is a bad idea to start with, I'd rather be headed west where there's more likely to be more people and less bears and cougars and bears and cougars. So, um, That's where my brain's been at today, and I have to finish that book. I'm actually doing an epilogue. I haven't done an epilogue in a while since I've done an epilogue for a book, but this one needs to be wrapped up in a bow because I want it to set up the next chapter. I don't want them to just collide from one book into the next. I want it to actually coalesce at the end of this one and then start a brand new adventure in the next one. I had somebody ask me about coaches, NHL coaches. I will say this. The effect that a coach has on his team is both overrated and underrated. There are plenty of teams who are in the playoffs year after year that I think pretty much any competent coach could get them there. But in terms of coaches that I look at and I say, no, that guy makes a difference, you're into Quenneville territory. You could argue, well, the Hawks, they have Taves and Kane, so that's why they've won 3 Stanley Cups. Fine, but there are plenty of other teams with superstars that haven't won a Stanley Cup. Come here, baby. I know your brother's beating you up. Come here and sit down. Come on, your brother won't beat you up if you're sitting on my lap. No, he just wanted that spot, is all it was. Yeah, he bit your ear again, didn't he? He knows your ear hurts. Just be careful. But the coaches that impress me the most, like Barry Trotz in Washington, I genuinely like him. No, I'm not a Caps fan. A lot of people, when Lindy Ruff went to Dallas, it was like, oh, Dallas is really making a move. I'm not a huge fan of Lindy Ruff. Because results with Lindy Ruff were mixed in Buffalo. Yeah, he was there for a long time. But there were good, there were bad seasons. And he's one of those coaches that I say doesn't hurt your team, but he doesn't make a good team great either. He's a decent coach. There's a lot of those guys. But there are a few Joel Quenneville's. Now, Babcock. Here we go. Babcock has been fortunate. Okay. He's had some great teams that he's coached. Now, the Scotty Bowman rule is you can be a good coach, but to be a great coach, you can take a good team and make them great. I don't know that Babcock has really done that. He's had some good teams that he's coached into the playoffs. He's always had a solid regular season record. This season with Toronto notwithstanding, that was planned. But is he a coach that I would say, like, would I put him in the top 5 in the NHL? Probably, but not at the top. Joel Quenneville I'd have at the top. Peter DeBoer really won me over in the playoffs this year. He showed me something that I didn't realize just how talented a coach he was. And he's smart, and he knows his matchups, and he's very good. Bruce Boudreau is a very good coach. It wasn't his fault that Anaheim lost Game 7s or that Washington lost Game 7s. Washington has not had any more success since they got rid of Boudreau than they did when they had him. And certainly, I don't foresee the Ducks doing a whole lot better with Carlisle. Not because I don't like Carlisle. I think Carlisle is a decent coach, but Boudreau wasn't the problem. His Game 7 record is just one of those things that you look at and you go, wow, that's so strange because he's good. I like Vigneault. What I like about Alain Vigneault, and I liked him in Montreal for this and in Vancouver, he keeps things light. And I think in today's NHL, the hard-ass coaches are on their way out completely. I think within the next 5 years, those hard-ass, ball-busting coaches are going to be done. Because today's athlete makes millions more than their coach. And on some level, I think players know, I don't have to play fantastic, because if I don't play great, you get fired. So if they don't like their coach, they know if they wait long enough, their coach is out. There are probably players in the league that can go to a GM and say, man, he's lost that room. I don't want to say anything, but he's lost the room, and you might want to consider. I don't know if you. I don't want to say fired. Like, put that idea in the GM's head, and then a couple months later, when the coach gets fired, go, I don't know what happened there. That's so weird. Because these players make so much money, and a lot of them have no movement, no trade clauses, and you don't want your fan base to be alienated. I look at Montreal as an example of a team that seems to be putting its coach before its players. If you don't like Michel Therrien and you don't get along with him, you're gone. Or Therrien. I don't think Michel Therrien's a great coach. I don't know from what I've seen of him in his coaching career. I haven't been impressed by him. And I'm not sure why Montreal is so insistent on going with him and making the team mold to what he wants rather than realizing they're losing good players and hurting themselves in the long run. Because that's what I see with Montreal. Yeah, they've got Carey Price, they've got some really good pieces, but you lose Subban, I don't know. I think you're losing long term. And with his reluctance to play some relatively decent rookies who might become something, and then you risk losing them. If they're European, you risk losing them to the KHL or back to the SHL or wherever they go. And if they're North American, they just demand a trade. I mean, it's tricky. And I remember Vigneault in Vancouver got criticized for not playing rookies, and with Vigneault in Vancouver, it was the rookies weren't very good. In Boston, Claude Julien gets criticized for not playing rookies enough. That was a large criticism of with Tyler Seguin. I was very vocal about how I believe Tyler Seguin was ready for more ice time than what Julien was giving him. I could not understand in the 2011 playoffs why Seguin didn't play a bigger role with that team because he was ready. And he showed it. And Julien just wouldn't give it to him. Just wouldn't do it. And I don't rate Claude Julien at this point as one of the top coaches in the NHL. He's a good coach. I think his strength seems to be that he's got the respect of the veterans, especially Marchand. Brad Marchand is a prick. And for some reason, he listens to Julien. So when he's about to do some prick move on the ice, Julien goes over and calms him down. That's a good coach. But when you look at the results for the Bruins, and they're just barely missing the playoffs the last 2 seasons, if they had a better coach, they make the playoffs. Part of to me what makes a great coach is can they change the momentum in a series. That's where Joel Quenneville is fantastic, and Ken Hitchcock is decent at that as well. And I think that the long term job stability for Peter Laviolette went up in the playoffs as well because they staved off elimination and they made it further in the playoffs than anybody thought they had a right to. So, in taking the Nashville Predators and making them a genuine contender, Laviolette might be in that top coaching level as well. But it's tricky. I don't think that the mouthiest coach is the best coach. So Tortorella is one of those guys that once his time in Columbus is up, I think that's it for him. I don't think he'll get another NHL job. I'm not even sure why Columbus hired John Tortorella, because it's a bad fit. I think Tortorella's best fit would be an experienced North American style hockey team. So basically what the Rangers were when he was there. Okay, they were coached. It was North American style. He was, an ass kicking coach on a team that kind of needed their asses kicked at the time. And when they went from Tortorella to Vigneault, that made total sense to me because Vigneault, he can be harsh and he can be tough, but he's still, my greatest memories of Vigneault are just him laughing during press conferences or during a game, just being casual and honest and open, and that was something to behold. And then in Vancouver, we went from Vigneault to Tortorella, so we went from that to kind of snippy Tortorella was on really good behavior in Vancouver. He's remembered for trying to go into the Calgary dressing room after Bob Hartley. I don't like Bob Hartley as a coach. I don't think he's a very good coach either. I honestly I think he's kind of a dirty coach, and based on that game, I totally understood why Tortorella was going after Hartley. When for the opening face-off of the game, you got all your goons on the ice against the Canucks finesse players. There's a problem. And every now and then I'll hear, well, that's just sending a message. At the start of a game? The opening face-off, you want to send a message with your goons? The message is, my team is shit. So I need to send guys out there to fight to try to intimidate you. It's not a good message. And I didn't blame Tortorella for losing his shit that game because I was pissed off myself watching it. As soon as I see the opening lineup, I'm like, what the hell are those assholes doing out there? This is the opening face-off, and then all hell broke loose, and rightfully so. So I don't put Hartley in that category. I think Edmonton with Todd McClellan, they've got an excellent coach. I hope he gets at least 3 more seasons, including this one coming up, to turn it around. The worst thing Edmonton could do is if they have another setback this year, is to fire McClellan and start all over. Because Edmonton honestly has had too many resets, and they need to stick with it. They need to give a coach this team and run with it, like Toronto is with Babcock. But coaching is one of those things that I always wanted to be the coach. When I was a little kid and playing around with hockey cards, people would ask me, you want to be a player? No, I want to be a coach. And when I was in elementary school, I mean, we had, our intramural sports, and I was the team captain. I was the team captain because one of the girls that was in the senior class made me the team captain. I would never have been named team captain. I was the shortest well, I wasn't the shortest then, but I was definitely the skinniest and considered to be the least jock-like. So no way in hell they would have made me team captain. But I knew not to put all my best players on one line. No matter what sport we were playing, I would make sure I spread out who the good players, the bad players were, so that everybody had to learn to play together. And at first, the jocks were like, why the hell am I with him? And I was like, just play. Trust me. And then we'd spank the shit out of the other team because they'd put all their good players on one line. So yeah, they might score a couple of times, but then when that second line came out, we whooped them. And it would balance out. And by, the end of any given sport in intramurals, we were leading. And it was, wow, we won that sport. Yeah, because I know how to coach. And that's important. I get worried about coaches that they have their 4 lines to start the game and then they start line juggling before the end of the first. You know who these coaches are. And there's a number of them that do it. Vino did it somewhat in Vancouver. The panic thing. So for coaches, that's something that I think is poor. I think you at the very least sit down with players and talk to them. Sit down with that line in between the first and second and say, look, what's going on? You guys aren't clicking. What's the problem? Are they checking you that well, or is something off? Be honest with me here. And then, go to other guys and go, all right, we're going to make a change. You're going onto their line. This guy's coming onto the line you've been on. We're going to make this work. But sometimes when you watch an NHL game, it's constant line juggling. And once you do that, your chemistry goes out the window and your game's over. It's done. I can understand it if you're down 5-0 going into the third, so you're trying to think of the next game and let's see what might work. But when you're down by a goal and you're losing the possession game and you're like, all right, we're going to switch everything out, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Anyways, that's my basic thoughts on coaching. I want to hear who you think is the best coach in the NHL. Give me a top 5. Who's the worst coach in the NHL? I'm not going to say Tortorella because I think worst coach is harsh. But it's tough. It's tough to find somebody that I would necessarily put below him at this point because the way he coaches doesn't mesh well with today's player, and it rubs too many players the wrong way, and he loses the dressing room relatively quickly. So, anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll probably have another video up tonight.